This is a video remembrance of the Bob Boreman Memorial held on Saturday, June 3rd, 2023 at the Mount Olive Lutheran Church in Santa Monica. The event was attended by about 150 people. We had live music, food, people spoke about Bob, people fellowshipped. Right here is the auditorium that it was held in at the church. In the lower left, that's Rosemary with the black hair, who is Bob's longtime girlfriend and main organizer of the event, one of the three organizers. Coming into view now is Patty, who is a longtime friend of Bob's and also one of the main organizers of the event. And in the black, in the left there, middle, is Nancy, also one of the main organizers of the event. We'll see more of them later when people speak. Right now I'm going to read from the flyer that was for the memorial. Then we're going to see the slideshow created by Patty, a special video created by a friend, and we're going to listen to people speak. The life of Bob Boreman. Bob was a free spirit who lived his life to the fullest. He did what he loved and what he wanted to do. Bob would take time out for you. He made you feel like you were the most important person. He made you feel special. He was a member of the AA program for over 44 years. Bob loved AA and he loved being sober. He told everyone to find out what you like to do and do it. Bob's love for flying airplanes came from his father Charles and his mother Margaret, who both had planes of their own. He liked to travel in his early years and went anywhere the wind took him. He was an accomplished skydiver, airplane pilot, artist, and musician. He attended high school and the Arts Center. Bob joined the workshop on Main Street in Santa Monica, California, and was there for over 47 years. He found himself among a group of artists who made it their home. He created a style all his own, and it carried him through his life all over the world. Bob was born on December 27, 1938 in Des Moines, Iowa. He was the youngest of three children. His mother, father, and sister Marcia have all passed. He is survived by his loving girlfriend of 23 years, Rosemary, his sister Joanne, and his son Brett, and his husband Alberti. Bob will be dearly missed by all of us whose lives he has touched. Unfortunately, we weren't able to record the music that the band was playing on the Zoom video because the Zoom video recorder blocked out the loud music from the band with its noise canceling software. But after the band was finished playing and after everyone had viewed the slideshow, Rosemary stepped up to welcome everyone and introduce a special video.
Thank all of you for joining us here today to celebrate Bob's life. Thank you.
Yeah.
If you'd like to, please take the table. Take a poster on the table over there and make a donation if you are able. There will be a video created by a friend of Bob's before we have family and friends share their stories of knowing Bob. Hopefully there will be enough time for more of you to join us and share your story or memory of knowing Bob. Thank you all for being here.
I had a food delivery pickup at Five Guys Burgers. I pulled into the closest parking spot adjacent to the restaurant, but then I noticed a sign posted at the spot, which read, "Joanne Fabrics, parking only." I thought to myself, well, I'm going to be in and out of this burger joint fairly quickly. I probably can take a chance and get away with it. But then I had this weird vision in my head of furious Joanne Fabrics employees storming out of the store and chastising me for preventing their loyal customers from having a spot to park in. I didn't want to make any waves, so to speak. So I pulled out of the spot and pulled into the only remaining spot left at the very rear of the parking lot. As I parked, I received a text message. It read, "Bobby Dangerous passed away at 7:57 a.m. today." Bobby Dangerous was my body surfing buddy in Santa Monica. Every morning, Bob would come by my van and shout out, "Hey, Eli, you going in the water?" Me and Bobby would make our way across the sand and into the Pacific Ocean, where together we would battle the waves. Bob had one hell of a life: an avid skydiver, hang glider, a motorcyclist, an airplane pilot, a daily body surfer, and a musician who practiced his saxophone religiously every morning. Bob was also a former raging drunk and drug dabbler who, decades ago, had to seek sobriety, as eventually it would have caught up to him. This wild life of Bob's led me to give him the nickname Bobby Dangerous. Bob was also an artist who managed to hustle his way into the art market and make a lucrative living for decades off of his craft. An incredibly rare feat that only a genuine, true, persistently grinding hustler could pull off. My incredible sadness for Bob's passing was somewhat overshadowed by the appreciation for the thrill-seeking life that he led and the hustler mentality that he had for navigating through this whole absurdist existence. What a goddamn ride. After absorbing the sad and sudden news of his passing, I immediately pulled out of the rear parking lot spot and I proceeded to pull right back in to the Joanne Fabrics only parking spot. Fuck it. This one's for Bobby.
After Eli's video was finished, Rosemary invited family members and friends to come up and speak about Bob, starting with Bob's son, Brett.
Okay, hi everybody. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Bob Boreman's son. Great. And I didn't think about his life, and I didn't make a list of all the things I wanted to talk about. I didn't write a letter, and I just said a prayer to God that I would just speak from my heart. So, with God's help, I'm going to speak from my heart. And be as honest and truthful as possible. I'm just going to lay it out. Like, Bob was an amazing person, and I'm overwhelmed by the amount of people that are here. And before I forget, I want to thank Rosie, Patty, and Nancy for putting this together. I said earlier, it's really overwhelming to see so many people here. The truth of the matter is, and don't take this the wrong way, since I know it's, no matter how I say this, it's going to come out wrong. He was the worst father on the planet. So, but you know what? It didn't matter because he was my dad. And no matter what. And you know, sometimes, I mean, I have to admit, I wasn't the easiest son either. Right? But because he was my dad, I always loved him, and I always admired him for everything that he did. He was so, to me, he was so fascinating. Like the fact that he made his living as an artist, the fact that he played the flute, that, well, here, the thing is, I could literally know every hour of the day how to get a hold of him. In the morning, he was surfing. Then he'd come home, he'd play his instrument, his flute, but then he started playing something saxophone. Well, back then it was the flute. And then, yeah, thank you. And then he would go to the studio, then he would go to an AA meeting, and then lunch, and then yeah, oh yeah, he loved MSNBC. He flew back to my house in Pennsylvania, and he would just scream at the TV. It's such an opinion about politics. It's interesting. And so if I called him and I said, okay, I'm coming to Palm Springs, and he would say, my husband's name is Alberti. And so I would say, oh, you know, I'm coming to Palm Springs. Do you and Rosie want to come out and visit, spend the night? He would say, well, is Alberti coming? I said, yes, he'll be here on Friday. Well, then we'll come on Saturday. He loved my husband, like loved my husband so much. And didn't he, Rosie? He really did. Sometimes, like, I think a little more than me, actually. Thank you. But you know what, the thing that I learned, and I learned it so late in life, and I'm really realizing it now, coming to the celebration of life, which, by the way, I didn't want to come to, because I've never been to a celebration of life, and I've never been to a funeral because I don't want to think of anybody ever leaving. But because Bob was my dad, I couldn't not come. So this is actually, I'm 60 years old. This is my very first celebration of life. And it's for my dad. What I learned that was really remarkable, and I learned this after he passed away, was the one thing that I got from Bob was the ability to have long-term relationships and to love people unconditionally. Because when I saw, which I told my husband, I was like, I don't know, it was like the fairy godmothers from like Cinderella, like twinkled in. And it was Patty and Rosemary and Nancy. And I mean, Patty, like 50 years, you went 40 years. Nancy dated him, and for a long time, and like 10 or 12 years, and then remained very close. And then Rosemary, or Rosie, has been with him ever since. And just to see these three women come together and in the span of time that he kept, I think that's the thing I want to remember most, is that he was so loved and so appreciated by so many people. And even when he was, the word, difficult. Like, people would say, yeah, but that's Bob, and you gotta love him for it. And I learned that after, when he was gone. And I want to thank all three of you women for that. And I want to thank everyone for being here. He will truly, truly be missed. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Michael Bendner, where are you? Oh, there you are. Come on up. Michael Bendner has known Bob for 55 years? 60 years. When? Okay.
And Brett, you were a bad boy, so it seemed like a good father. I'm sitting up for my. Actually, I have the honor of knowing Brett when he was very teeny, he was a small little boy. But not long, because I was seeing him passing. I got to know Bob exceedingly well through drunken bouts, fist fights, walking through glass doors, falling off of walls. These were all the normal things that he and I did. I was in my early 20s, his mid-20s. And we tried to do everything we thought we could do, but couldn't. And we have a lot of scars to show for it. He was a remarkable friend. And I always saw him as someone that was family rather than just an acquaintance. I've known him that long. My house is covered with his dogs. I've worked on him with him for 55 years on various and sundry projects. Huge murals at LAX, projects at every hotel that we did. We did 1,600 hotels. So Bob was involved in probably 500 of them. He was not only a renderer, artist, we used his work in the projects. The most recent was actually, where are you? In Palm Desert, at the Hyatt there, we have all his original paintings up in the suites. They were amazing. They made the hotel. I must tell you, you should go take a look if you have not seen it. And I only remember you when you were that big, and you were a pain in the ass. But you were loved. You have to know, no matter what you did, your father loved you more than you'll ever know. He couldn't express that in a proper way, I think. Anyway, I think I may be the only one that went to AA meetings and still not going, but I had a DUI, so I had to go to 6 of them. Bob took me by the hand, sat me down, and made sure everything was okay. But I'm so proud of what AA has done for Bob, or he would be alive, wouldn't have been alive this long. And I think many other people I've met with and through Bob. It's a remarkable situation, remarkable. So please, everyone, know what a wonderful experience you're having. As far as Bob is concerned, I saw him the day before he passed. And I was so concerned about his passing that I couldn't come back the next day. I'm sorry to say that. But he was that dear to me. I remember the brawls we got into driving over the Saturday night to hospital so we get stitched up. That's right. We had a remarkable time together. And it was being 20, I guess, or maybe your 20s. And then all of a sudden the 30s left on us. Then the 40s. Then the 50s. None of you will know this, and then the 60s. And then the 70s were a real bitch. And now I'm going to have my 40th birthday all over again this week, and I'm having a memorial at that party for Bob also, because he meant that much to all of us. Bob is not only our friend, he is a mentor. He was the first one to come to meetings, the last one to leave, I understood. He took care of so many people, including myself. I had a little bout of cancer, and I'm not supposed to be here. So that's why I'm turning 40, because that's my stem cell donor's age. He's turning 40 also. I've accepted his age. I think that's only appropriate. God damn it. But I am so pleased just to be here amongst so many of his friends. I was on a little path with him, and we had our own friends, but there was very few. But he'd come over all the time. We saw each other as much as we could. And I was always envious of Bob's lady friends. Lady friend. Lady friend. He always was magnificent. I was envious. It's okay to say that. Kathy, it's okay. It's long way to envy. But it's so much fun to be amongst you all. And I'm sure many people have wonderful things to say. I do not want to keep you from other memories. But I want to say, I know Bob is blessing everyone here. And I know I am so pleased and so proud to be amongst this group of people. So thank you for allowing me to come up here and speak like an old bear and tease Bob. Oh wait, are there any other children of Bob's in the audience? Hey, anyone out there? Oh, 1, 2, 4, only 4 hands. I thought there'd be more. Well, I have to get on that, folks. My only duty is to around here. Since I haven't seen you for so many years since you were born. But thank you, and God bless you all. And goodbye.
And now I want to hear from Nick. And from the workshop.
Testing. Yeah. Well, boy, I'm up here. I'm thinking, am I going to make it? Am I going to, see this out? I mean, we'll see. Anyway, yeah, I've known Bob for maybe 45 years. I came into the studio and there was Bob. I mean, and actually it took me about 6 months, I think, to actually talk to Bob, because I was sort of very intimidated when I came in. I mean, he was very busy. He was working. He had this big Fu Manchu sort of moustache and little granny glasses and little long bushy hair, and very busy. And I thought, okay, serious guy. But then I found out, Anyway, I mean, having known someone that long, I mean, I've known him over half my life. He's, definitely family. There's so many stories. I thought, well, what could I say? But I think what I want to really talk about, there's going to be a lot of people talking probably about, Bob and his adventures. But what I want to really talk about, Bob, is Bob as an artist. As an artist myself, I watched Bob and I watched him work, and he was an amazing artist that you can see his art is around. Very, very talented. He was a master printmaker. He was a painter. He was a craftsman. He did, you name it, he could do it. I mean, to watch him make a print, these prints that he made, I mean, he sort of pioneered a technique all by himself. Just amazing the way he worked. And we'd all laugh because we'd be in the studio and You know, and say, well, we're printing money, you know, that's what we're doing, we're printing money. And he did, I mean, he did a lot, he produced a lot of work and it was excellent. Very, very good. Also to see him paint. I mean, Bob was, you know, we all know Bob. I mean, but Bob didn't do anything sort of he did everything very quickly. I mean, he just attacked. I mean, when he would go to do a painting, I think in the early days, I can't remember, but I think he used to do them on the floor. I'm not quite sure. But at one point in the studio, there's a wall came up, and the Great Wall of the studio, and it was great for Bob because he'd staple a huge canvas up on blank canvas, and he'd attack it. But within about 5 or 10 minutes, there would be a painting up there. He would do it with acrylics, and we quickly learned that he did not comment on his paintings when he first started because, you know, I know there was always someone in the studio who would say, wow, Bob, that's great. And he'd say, I've only just started, you know, wait a minute. And he'd go away. And then the next day he'd come and he'd paint over the painting. So, and this would go on for about 3 or 4 or 5 days. You'd end up with this fabulous painting, and there'd be like maybe 5 paintings underneath it. And bits and pieces of them show through, and that's the way he worked. And he knew exactly when it was finished. He would say, okay, it's done. But then it wasn't done, actually. Afterwards, he'd come back with a little brush and he would sort of touch it up and do things. But then the next step, well, then he would just roll it up. He'd roll it up and put it up in the rafters. And every now and then, some unsuspecting person would come in the studio and say, you know, has anyone got any paintings? And Bob would pull out his paintings. And if they wanted to buy it, he would make a frame for it. He would make stretcher bars in a frame. And it was just amazing to what this is the craftsman Bob. There was a fellow in the building, Billy. We all good, yeah. Billy and Bob, they're together. And he'd say, Billy, come on. And then he'd pull out this big old circular saw. It was like, it was like something out of a, I don't know, out of a torture chamber or something. And the way Bob worked, I mean, I'm not saying Bob was cheap. Bob wasn't cheap. He was economical. He was economical. He really knew. He would go and get big 2x4s. I mean, he could go and get finished wood for these things very easily, but he'd get a 2x4 and he would split the 2x4 in the circuit store. I mean, it was horrendous to watch. There was Billy on one end and Bob was at the other, and they pushed this thing through. And it's amazing how they did it. But anyway, he'd end up make the stretcher bars, and then he'd make the frame. Beautiful frame, just gorgeous, and all out of 2x4s. Finished, and he would paint them, put a whitewash on them, black shadow, just fabulous. He was a craftsman, definitely a craftsman. That's not all he did. Yeah, as Michael said, he spent the time when he was doing tapestries, and this was amazing. I mean, the way he did these tapestries, he worked with someone who actually, you know, constructed the tapestries, but he did the design, and he was a silkscreen printer too. He loved to silkscreen print, and he would make this thing. Oh, and anyway, he would make this beautiful little silk screen. It was just maybe about this big. It would be to scale, The tapestry was probably about, I don't know, 10 foot by 5 foot or something, huge thing. And he'd make this little jewel, just a gorgeous piece of work. I mean, I wish out of all his work, I would love to have one of those. I don't know if there's any of them around, but he would just throw this thing, he would print it, and then he would take it to the tapestry maker, and God knew exactly what he wanted. He'd say, okay, I want that green area there, I want that 2 inches high, or the blue area, I want that 1 inches high, and they make a tapestry. And just if I write somebody, yeah. You could probably hear me if I just shouted to you, right? Anyway, Bob was, he was, it's funny, someone for 45 years and it's just, he just taken for granted, I think I got to know Bob more in the last years of his life when the studio went down and we all went our different ways. Bob would come by. He found out where I lived. I tried to avoid it, but he found out where I lived. And he'd come by, maybe once a week and say, hey, Bob, a cup of coffee? Sure. So I'd brew some coffee. And it would always probably be on a Tuesday, right? Tuesday, because what did I do on Mondays? I went fishing. And I would catch fish. So Bob would come by and we just, shoot the breeze, or Bob would. he really had something to say. And he was like, he was very, very funny, actually. He was a funny guy. And I think that's how I got to know him much more, just in the last few years of his life. And I saw him, he came by one day and, we were talking and I said, well, how you doing? He said, well, I feel a little strange. And then I think the next week he was in hospital. So I went to see him. I went to see him for 2 days and he was sitting in bed and he was quite jolly, he was sitting in bed having a good time. And then suddenly all these people would come into the room. And it was sort of like there was a meeting going on. And I thought, I'm out of here. So I'd leave. And it was 2 days. And I said, well, what's going on, Bob? He said, well, maybe I got 6 months or so, but I think I'm going to go home. I don't want to do this. I'm going to go home and just relax at home. So I thought, that's it. I won't see Bob again, and even so, and he passed away, very, very quickly. And the thing that impressed me with Bob is that he showed me how to live his life and to leave his life. He did it with the way he lived his life. I mean, he just rushed into it and he rushed out of it, and with no problem whatsoever. He was totally at ease. He was fearless. I mean, I think that's what I think about Bob. He was totally fearless, and I love him and I miss him. Thank you.
Sadie, wonderful Sadie, daughter of Bonnie and Bill.
I have notes because I'll Sadie is my name.
Hi, Sadie.
I'm a workshop kid. I grew up there. I wouldn't go often back in the early days of the workshop when I first met Bob through my parents, because I was too loaded, way too loaded. So, for the most part, I thought. I know Bob through my parents, Bonnie and Billy, Bonnie Turtle, Billy Turtle and Bonnie Reynolds. And Billy was an artist at the workshop with Bob and got sober in the very early days. Bob was Billy's teacher and great friend who brought him to AA, and he got sober. And as their daughter, I can tell you that they would not have survived. They barely survived. It was absolute. Some of you know, obviously we don't come to AA because we have a little problem with drinking. So yeah, they miraculously, Bob and met Billy got sober. And then my mother got sober, but not before going to New Zealand with some guy, which she hated because, well, there are very many sheep and no bars. The bars closed at 5. I was on the streets of LA at that time, but the workshop was a safe spot. Like I said, I wouldn't come often, but when I need to come like my wounds, from the life out there, I did that as an adolescent. Teenager. I got some nonsense. AA saves lives. So like through Bob, Billy, Bonnie, I got sober.
Let me tell you, it's a miracle. It's a fucking miracle that I'm alive. I can't even believe it. And then I got married for 25 years. And it turns out this guy, the malignant narcissist, has been tricking me the whole time, which I was trying for by earlier events, right? So I'm divorcing that asshole, right? And I'm taking the house. But anyway, these early days of the workshop for Billy became solid ground. And my mother got home from New Zealand and she got sober too. And by that time I was in prison in Texas for the second time. Waco, because near Waco, it was rather dreadful, but a break from the life out there. And I don't know, there was an inkling then that maybe it was possible to change my life. So I eventually got sober by that inkling, and then eventually getting my parole switched to California and staying at the workshop for a number of years, like I went back to school. I went back to school. I had a 7th grade education because I was on the streets, and I went back to school living at the workshop for 4 years. Transferred to UCSC, graduated with highest honors in major, all these things, and just because of, have I got on with it? I barely do that. Yeah. But I could talk about that and just all right, so not only was he sober, but he focused on wellness way back with the Pritikin and the exercise and the everyday at the beach, and that is what traumatized people. That is what alcoholics and addicts need. We need to be in the ocean. We need to be active out there. Same way with his art and his music, and I remember his box, like the studio. If nobody else got something, he made a box out of all the scrap wood in the studio so he could play saxophone every day. And it was, you know, right out. And then just, you know, I was there at the workshop all these years and was always there making art, teaching art. And then all of a sudden I see his prints everywhere on television, in restaurants on Maui. I called him Uncle Bob and he was family to me. He was true blue to the end, every Thanksgiving and every day he was at the workshop. And as my father began to fade with dementia, and in the later days, Bob was there every day. And he showed us how to live. He lit our way, he lights our way. He is the greatest mentor that I can imagine. Live by the principles and his practices. I love Bob so much, and I love each of you, and let his spirit lift us for
Jimmy had it? Uh-huh.
Holy shit. It's the Bob Boreman show. Hey, Bob, you're all fine. Remember, we love you. I promise not to say any profanity, and I promise to be good. I mean, the point is, Rose said, listen, could you talk about art? Just talk about art. I mean, the point is, well, I had so much fun with Bob that it's very difficult talking about art, just art. Not just saying, don't talk about art. There's like the famous Iowa corn buzzard, which is a fictitious bird, which I used to mention all the time just to piss Bob off. And the whole thing, Bob was great sport. In the studio, we would try to get him so angry that he would lose his temper. It was just work. It was wonderful because finally he would just explode into laughter, and that laughter is, you know, I'm hearing it right now. It's Bob's laughter. Anyway, Rose said, please talk about so I wrote down 1978, Liz, Mick, Jack, Max is there, and I wrote Diebenkorn, Skid Row, Santa Monica, which is where we were. I mean, just 10 years previous to arriving and meeting Bob in 1978, Diebenkorn had made our little neighborhood world famous, and so this is what it was about. And back at that time, I mean, obviously I'm not American. And so I showed up and I met Bob in 1978. One of the reasons why I was there was because of David Hoffman. And David's talking in Braille. I see. And so what happened was I showed up in Santa Monica at the studio with Liz. Liz was a printmaker and she found the studio. So suddenly it was Bob working away. And Hockney had been, you know, instrumental in me arriving in California because Hockney had been this very very staid gay artist in Royal College. He'd come over to Santa Monica and done this wild shit, and it was wonderful. So the metamorphosis of David Hockney being establishment, his best work was attributed to being the restrooms at the Royal College of Art, or the men's restroom. So wow, so suddenly he came here and he did this amazing work. And I saw this exhibited in London, so I thought, I've got to get to Santa Monica. So I showed up in Santa Monica in 1978 in the studio. Liz had discovered the studio. Liz is sitting right there. Liz was the printmaker. So he was Bob working away as a crazy printmaker. And I was watching him. I got to know him. And it became obvious that we were going to be friends. Bob had been to a brilliant art school, a really great art school. And he thought, screw this. I can't do this commercial stuff because he'd gone into the corporate world. He was doing very well, but he gave it up. He just gave it up because he wanted to do his own thing as an artist. And this is exactly my story. I'd been to a good art school. I'd been very well established in England, and I'd come out to California to do my own thing. And so there was a kind of, you know, we became friends, and I'd see him. And so I was trying to get my own thing going as a painter. And what happened was, one day I went up to Mick, who's just spoken, and said, hey, Mick, I think I've got a problem with booze. And he said, really? That's no big deal, just going to the park. So I walked over to him and said, hey, well, I think I've got a problem with booze. And I told him what's going on. He said, you don't have to do that, Joe. Wow. And he said it with such conviction, such sincerity. I stopped drinking for 3 days. It was really quite amazing. Because my whole thing was looking back, and I didn't want to stop drinking. Because like my heroes, it was God, it was just basically Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Rothko, Pollock, all these guys were my heroes. And they'd all died behind booze. They died drunk. You know, Pollock drove over the cliff in his car and drowned. Mark Rothko tried to cut his arms off with a cutthroat razor. And these were like the abstract expressions
the old thought of what was going on. So there was no way I was going to let go do it. But Bob said, you can do it. You can, you know, you can be wild and sober. And I looked at him and I said, fuck, I really can. Because this guy is nuts. His whole trip, sober. He'd been a diver at high school, and I think he dived at state. And his whole thing was diving on apartment buildings into swimming pools. I thought, and so I said, how do I do it? He said, you just get on your knees and you'll start to keep your focus on the day. And I thought, well, that's crap. But I tried it, you know, and I'm here to tell you, 42 years later, I did that this morning too. So that's the whole thing. So Bob and I were talking about painting. So all through the 80s, he was doing printmaking. But my whole trip was to be a painter. His whole trip was to be a painter. And the whole list that I wrote here on my brief and rose, to be serious about it, there was the local guys, obviously was Evenport. But in Santa Monica, there was Laddie John Dill, Hockney, Ed Nosey, Ed Lisker, Elvis Story, all these guys. And the whole thing back then, it was called Rebels in Paradise, the California artists. And so it was it's ridiculous. We were Rebels in Paradise. And Bob was wanting to paint. So all the stuff he was doing and selling, the idea was to paint. So come 1992, I'd been out of town. And I came back and I was living in the studio. And there, I was living there, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night, go to the bathroom, and in front of me was Bob's painting room. And my painting room was behind me. And they were made of big sheets of Luan, 8x4. And on these, you could all painted white. I'm getting confused by hand signals. And so what was going on was I'd see a painting, these really beautiful paintings in the middle of the night, what Bob was doing. And so through 1992, 1993, 1994, all the way through, this was Bob's heyday. And I was there, living there, seeing his pictures take shape. His painting wall was opposite to my painting wall, and he was doing these big pictures that Nick described, and they were fucking beautiful. And you look at the work of Mark Rothko, you look at Franz Klein, and so what I'm here to tell you is, Bob really made these paintings were totally beautiful. They were great. Some of them are in collections, wherever. So if any of you guys have got some dough, why don't you try to find some? I'm sure it's got a mistake, and I'm sure some people could use the money. So go for it. You know, okay, so that's my little serious pitch that Rose asked. Bob was my friend right from day one. The time when we were like wandering around Standard Brands, looking at cheap oil paint, all this stuff, because of Bob's thriftiness. It was great. I mean, I wouldn't have made it in America as an immigrant in a way if it wasn't for Bob. Bob was one of the people who helped me make it here as an American, if I consider myself American, even though I've gone to the passport. So Bob was a great guy. All of you, how many hundred people are here, you've all got a bit of Bob. I've got a bit of Bob. He gave himself to so many people. He loved life. He really loved life. He loved them back. And you're the proof of that.
Gloria worked with Bob.
Hi, can everybody hear me? I wrote a poem for Bob. He was a very important person in my life. So, Bob, if this is for you, it ain't Shakespeare, but it certainly tells a story. My friend Bob Boreman, one of a kind, Your many talents, easy to find, shared them all through business and play. You passed away on an April day. When we met, I heard the mourn of a distant lilting horn. Jazz notes I tried to trace coming from a distant place. Emerging from your practice booth, I finally found out the truth. Introduced myself as a fellow musician, but wasn't prepared for the collision. Expecting to meet someone mellowed. Oh, that's for you, you bellowed. But you soon became a wonderful friend and remained 25 years till the end. In the artist's place on thank you. I have a benign tremor, so it's hard for me to hold on. Thank you. Okay. In the artist's space on Main, the printer shop with Susan and Jack, artists Mick Clown, Curtis, Billy, and Bonnie, on Tara the Potter, with space in the back. Weekly, we met with others to jam, my piano, your sax, a slam, Kathy Carroll's guitar strumming, Gene Stone on the drumming. We played for parties at the Shores Place, Kathy on guitar, Hutter Smith on bass. With Greg Dahl, Nino, and others, we planned 2 years at West LA College Jazz Band. Playing at my 90th bash, Mike Saul on keys, your sax was a smash. A gifted artist and teacher, you're blessed. Paintings, renderings, monoprints, the best. For my banking projects, we were a team. Collaborated on many a scheme. Colors and murals you designed remain advanced, you left behind. And architectural colors supreme. Your editing gave my book esteem. Occasionally, when things were strained, a pain in the butt when you complained, but your sunny smile would clear and definitely conquered us all, my dear. Friends like Rosemary and Nancy, everyone who knew you confirmed, you lived life on your own terms, approached life with veracity, daring was your specialty. A surfer, a diver in the sky. For accomplishments, you set the bar high. The many challenges you had to face were handled with resolve and grace. The issues were complicated and strong. You never thought you'd live this long.
Yeah.
We miss the New Year's celebration cheer. We miss the bands that played each year. Our favorite spot for the parade is gone, but your colorful expletives linger on. Bob Boreman, wherever you are, you're our hero. You're a star.
So beautiful, thank you. Bill R. Blaster.
Blaster.
Open stage. I'm not real good with microphones. I have one of those voices that I don't really need one, but I'm really humbled to I haven't cried a lot of tears about Bob dying. And I moved to Colorado 23 years ago. So I knew Bob for about 15 years before I left. And that period of time is half of my life. 75. And I met, I think part of the tears, I met Bob and Jack began in program back in 1985. And listening to the other speakers talk and then knowing some of the people that know Bob that well. Nancy. I'm not going to talk. Bob was an artist, but what struck me the most before I got up was all these people being part of Bob's. I had all of it. And when I got to know him, he survived a heart attack. He loved Jack again, and Jack again loved me. Bob, and I didn't have that kind of upbringing. I didn't have a brother, but those two men got to be that way. Both a little older than me, but not terribly. And probably most of the tears. When I was able to talk to Bob before he died, when I found out that he had chosen to go to hospice, I immediately called him and we talked. The last time I was here was in October last year, and the last thing I did before I left was they Rosie and him invited me to dinner. We went to listen to music together. That's the kind of friend he was. Every time I come back, all around the LA in those 23 years, and I used to come back twice a year then. The studio was the haven. Everybody that's involved with the studio knows that. It's a safe place to go. Bob was always there. And I stayed with my sister near the Marina Center, so I would go to meetings, and Bob would be there at 6:45 every time I came to California. All of his attributes were mentioned, but I don't know how many of you ever played racquetball. I did. And in my early sobriety, we played a lot of racquetball. He was 7 years older than me. He gave me all I can handle. I was a pretty good athlete in my 30s and 40s. I've only been in a small plane a couple of times in my life. And I didn't know him but 3 months before he took me for a ride in his plane. And it's always stuck because John Denver died in a small plane over the same ocean. His friend, I forget his name, the tall guy that talked first, said he was envious. I was envious of his artistic ability. I started painting when and the artist I met, I didn't know they were artists. I grew up kind of weird, but he said, okay, I'll teach you. And he took me to Standard Brands and bought me paint, didn't buy me, I bought paintbrushes and a canvas, and he said paint. So I've been doing that for a long time before I met Bob. So I was always envious of what Mick described as how this man painted, or how this man made his prints, or how he built the thing to practice his saxophone, which drove a lot of people crazy at first until he emerged as a virtuoso saxophone player. I was jealous. I always thought the sax was really amazing instrument. Watched him, and in those years of knowing him, I learned a lot about. We would talk, about his dad and what he did when he was a kid, and he was an adventurer or a wild guy. My nickname for Bob was E-Ride. I had this idea of doing a cartoon strip called E-Ride. Well, you know what an E-Ride is, right? That's the Disneyland ride. It's the most dangerous, the most fun ride. That was kind of my nickname for him. These deaths are tough. I get to be 75 years old, as a number of you are in this room are close to. Mortality is just part of the game. And I too, like Mick said, about Bob accepting his death. That's kind of like, certainly like I would like to be able to go out rather than, the chemotherapy. I've seen people suffer for years trying to stay alive when they could have just posted out.
I guess that's it. I'm really touched by how many people's lives Bob touched, and I knew that. So when Nancy asked me to speak, I said, well, I didn't even think about it. I said, "Chip, if I get a chance to speak, because I love Bob." And she said, you know, she'd reached out to me and asked me. So I am really humbled to, having been gone for so long, to have maintained the same friendship with Bob, even though I remember something.
Skydiver Mike.
I'm Mike McCarthy, and thank you, Patty and Nancy and Rosemary, for putting this together. Wow, Bob had a lot of friends. Look around. I brought some notes here. I hope my voice holds up for this. I met Bob in the late 80s out at the drop zone at Harris Valley, and I later met Patty and a bunch of other folks who skydived. Who were also in the same fellowship that we all are. So that took my friendship with Bob and them a lot deeper than it would just be skydivers. And Bob was one of these old time jumpers from the late 60s. And we always enjoyed hearing his stories about the old days, dangerous days in Taft. We knew about his hang gliding, that he had a private pilot's license, that he was a musician, and that he was an artist. I've been to his studio over there several times. One of his prints hangs up in my living room, as it does with many of my skydiving friends. And Bob and I used to talk about jumping and how much fun it was to fly around up way up there like a little bird with your friends, and how much fun it was, and you know, thousands of times. So yes, indeed, it was a lot of fun. And we had a lot of great trips to Cascaris Farms and jumping with the Weasleys. Bob had this wonderful way when I first met him, is you just knew you were accepted. He was a friend to everybody, accepted everybody, warts and all. And you know, for me, it was when I saw Bob at the drop zone or at his studio or anywhere else, it was like my day suddenly got better. And I maybe didn't know why. But Bob had that special gift that he could do with people and make them feel fully accepted just the way they were and loved and needed. So, you know, it's a real gift for me. A month before he passed, I was at an assembly over yonder. I called him up and said, "Hey, Bob, I got some parachutes magazines I dropped off." Spent a few minutes. He told me about his illness, that he didn't have a lot of energy. He said, "I'll only stay for 5 minutes." But you go to Bob's place, you know, 5 minutes turns into 2 hours. And we had this great discussion about life, the things that were really important, like our friends, loving relationships that we have, peace of mind. You know, the real important thing, we talked about our jumping friends and what they were all doing. And we also talked about death. And he talked about how he wanted to do it on his own terms, which, you know, I'm certainly okay with. And then he kind of made a joke about it, was that he wondered if it would be like propanol, like, you know, where you're here now and now you're gone, you know, like right before you get the colonoscopy and they put you out. So we were joking about that. But he had a real good acceptance about all of this. A week later, I went over there with another friend of mine to say our goodbyes. Patty was there, Rosemary, Nancy, and some other folks. And it was this great afternoon we spent with each other. And as we were leaving, Bob was in his bedroom lying down by himself. I thought, this is the last time I'm going to be able to see him here. So I told him, I thanked him for his friendship for, you know, well over 30 years, that he had a lot of friends, that he was loved, and I was one of the people that loved him. And it was kind of a nice send off. And he called the next day and left a message on my voicemail and thanked us for our visit. I'll close with this. Years ago, one of my friends said, if you want to know how many friends somebody had in their life, to see how many people they touched in their life. Go to their memorial or their funeral and look around. Well, look around at all the people who came here. Had lots of friends, and he was. I'm grateful that he was one of my good friends for more than 3 decades. So thank you all.
Johnny? Honey, are you here? No, Patty, would you like to tell her?
Let me create a little something, because Bob was my best friend. Wow. I met him when I had about 6 months over, maybe. And he dropped Dana off after their group therapy session. And he opened the door and he looked at me and he goes, "You should come make a skydive with me." And it was something I never even crossed my mind. I never even knew that was a thing people do. And I said, sure, so we went out to Smokehouse City with him, we made a jump, and then he looked at me and he said, "You gotta go right back up and do it again." Because the first one, you're not really scared. What's there to be scared about? You never done it before, you don't know. The second one, I'm so scared. But he said, if I didn't go up there right now, I would never come back, because a lot of people, make a jump and go, wow, that was great. But then, they don't really ever come back. They just do it for the whatever they do it for. But I came back, and I came back every Sunday. I took my unemployment check and I went up to the job site. And for me, really sobriety, it was such a good high. I needed that, you know what I mean? I needed that replacement, I think, the way that I used and drank, I needed something serious to replace that. And out of 1,500 jumps or so that I made probably almost all of those with Bob. And we were competitive. He was like my brother, I was his sister, and we'd get in the door and I'd go, "I'll beat you down there." And we used to like to die. It was like the last guys out of the plane, and the formation is gone, and you'd have to go really fast, 200 miles an hour, just track me down to the formation. I'd always beat him. And that was our relationship, when I, was gonna, well, Bob taught me so much about hanging out and showing up. So, and that was just by watching him, I watched this guy and what he did. He always, there's always a lot of homeless people. He always had a quarter. He'd never not give a homeless person a quarter when they asked, and it was perfect, because then you just kept a few quarters in your pocket, and then didn't have to feel guilty. You're doing your part, and he did his part for, he did his part. Thank you guys for showing up. I love that guy. I probably will never have much fun with anybody else. Yeah, imagine. So next lifetime, I'm sure we'll find each other again. Thanks.
Patty, you reminded me of, I was one of those people who did one skydive. And it was marvelous, it was wonderful, but it was beautiful. I understand, but I never went back to that. Went to the drop zone a lot, but never went back out of a plane. But the other thing that you reminded me of is Bob had a plane when I met him, this little teeny rickety plane. He had a rickety plane, a rickety motorcycle, a rickety car, everything. It was rickety, but he took me up in his plane. He said, let's go to Catalina. I said, okay. So halfway to Catalina over the ocean, Bob says, oh, I just want you to know I have a parachute in the back. I said, well, who gets to use it? And he said, well, do you know how to use it? I said, no. He said, well. We made it. And the other thing that you reminded me of was walking down the street with Bob, who was so excited when he got to go to the thrift store and found something special. When we walked down the street together, people tried to give Bob quarters. No, that's okay. Yeah, he's a special guy. You all know that. And everybody who I ever try to talk to about Bob, we talk and we talk about Bob. And then all you can say is, he was just Bob. Nobody liked him. Nobody liked him. So I think we have time for any of you that have a quick memory or anything. We have about 15 minutes or so. If you can keep it kind of short, but you just want to say something, please come on.
Hi guys, I'm Stan Summers, a surfer in Ocean Park, and you know, we're an interesting crowd, this Ocean Park crowd. It's the first beach I ever went to as a surfer. Well, not even as a surfer, as a kid. My first beach, age 4. But now, you know, my kind of retirement, semi-retirement, and I'm an artist too. You know, every morning we all check the surf at Ocean Park, and it's a wonderful crowd. There's Patty, there's Guy, there's Lacey back there. We're, you know, Ben, Spider. There's a whole cast of us, and Bob is there. He was one of us, and since we have the art thing in common, he always took a lot of time with me. He came to my art show. We had a commonality, and if I missed something, is that he would talk and then I'd kind of exit so I could go surfing. And I kind of missed it. I exited sometimes because it was enjoyable having a friend and surfer. And I really think if I've learned anything in my quest of life of surfing and artwork, it's that God really loves the surfers and the artists. And I'm sure Bob's in heaven, God's hanging out with him right now. Because God might be a surfer and an artist. I think he might be. He's a creator for sure. And Bob is creative. But I just want to leave one last note. When the wind was calm and the waves were pumping, Bob was right there with us surfing. And I'll miss him. Bye. Thank you.
Anybody else want to come up? Hey, Barry.
Hi, I'll be real brief. I met Bob 40-some plus years ago. And my name is Barry. And the day I met him, I thought he looked like the actor James Whitmore, because he had this really tight weaved hair. I was about 6 hours sober, and I thought his friend Jack looked like Santa Claus. But anyway, maybe a few months after meeting both of them, Bob took me up in that rickety plane, And about 5 years earlier, I had tried to take a flight lesson, and I was under the influence and my hands were shaky and stuff. So I thought, well, now I'm going to try this sober. And we no sooner left Santa Monica than Bob said, "You want to try flying the plane?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I'm a risk taker." And he said, "Taking risks is what it's all about." And I said, "You are sober though, right?" Because I didn't want to be like the student sober, and maybe this guy really isn't sober or whatever, because he's in charge. And but we ended up going down to try and skydive. And the point I want to make has to do with I know that Bob was rough and all this, but when we got to Paris, I chickened out, and I felt like I had felt in my youth, which was always quite not good enough or less than or whatever. And I said, I'm sorry that I'm not willing to do this, and I'm sorry if I've been baggage on the way here. And he just looked at me and said, "It's not for everybody." And I thought, that's what I needed to hear instead of pussy or whatever, So he was a special guy in my life. Thanks.
Mic stands too low. How's everybody doing? Celebration. Hey, okay, I'm coming from a different angle, but I'll tell you my association with Bob Boreman. I met Bob and some of the other musicians here, well, two of them, Neil and Emmett, trombone player and alpha player. And I was meeting up with these guys over by USC on Jefferson over there, kind of in the hood, like kind of area. So I go over there and they don't answer the door, so I'm getting ready to leave. So they came to the door. I walk in and I met those guys. They were trying to play some R&B songs. So y'all know that's funny, right? So anyway, they were playing Skin Tight by Ohio Players. Everybody know that song. So they told me, "Hey, Sonny, man, and teach Bob." I said, "Okay, man." I tried to show him how to play it, and Bob couldn't. "Man, I don't know how to play that stuff, man." I said, "Okay, man, just do the best you can." But we went on from there, and as our association, the Friendship grew, we did the spoken word gig. It was in Long Beach. And Emmett had us all go down there. We went down there and did this with this guitar player. And we were up on stage. So I said, "Oh man, what's gonna happen now?" Because I know Bob don't know none of this Cool in the Gang and all these other groups. So I told Bob, you guys all that. I told Bob, I said, "Bob, just hold the horn and fake it, man. Just act up." So Bob did it. Nobody knew one play. So we did that gig, and then they told me about West LA College. I went over there, and they all played in the band over there at West LA College. So I went over there, met the director, and we really formed a real close association and friendship with each other. From that point, we did the graduations and all this kind of stuff. So after that, me and the trombone player Emmett, we were at this church I was attending. I know the pastor. It was called New Life Churches in Hawthorne. So anyway, he came over and I said, "Well, probably just be him, Next thing I know, I don't know who got the word out, but I see Bob, Nino, Greg Dow, all these guys walking through the door, And so I thought the pastor was going to tell me, "Hey, man, that's too many guys, So he went on, and then the tall guy that's in the back, Brian Pitts, he walks in the door, and the whole church is looking, that guy's 7 feet tall, what, he can play a horn? So it's funny, but Bob is the one that was a real character when we would play. We had these really, I'm not gonna say they were holier than thou worship team members, these 2 ladies. They stood in front of the horn section, we were behind them. So the percussionist came up and he told me, "Hey Sonny, man, you know what they saying about you guys back there?" I said, "What?" He said, "They calling you guys Sinners Row." I said, "Sinners Row?" See what it was about. Bob would slip sometimes, because I don't know the last time Bob had been in church surrounding and stuff. So sometimes Bob would be talking, we're talking to each other or whatever. And we would say something, and he might not, I don't know, his mind would be going different places. And he would say, "Well, I don't give a, you know what." So these ladies, I see them cringing, and that's where this center growing. I said, "Those guys back in the morning still. Are you guys saved? Are they Christians?" So we survived that for a long time. We were in that church about 6, 7 years now, somewhere around there. So we did good, and then we moved on, and we started. Bob told me about the thing you guys don't know about in Santa Monica at the place down there, art studio, and so we started going there on New Year's Day. And man, I said, "Oh boy, this is cool," because for my flowers, yeah, Jack did a real great job, putting that together, because I had all kind of people who started coming down in my family, my family members. They said, "Oh man, this is cool. You guys playing, don't have to pay to get in." So yeah, well, you could leave a little tip jar if you want. But anyway, we did that, and we really enjoyed ourselves. And then after that's when Bob started getting all these other gigs with Mr. Malibu over there, Michael Bender. And we started playing at his house. He had these things that go on, Bob would get us these gigs out there. And I guess after Malibu, yeah. And we would play. We had a great time. I mean, it was kind of rough getting down where his house was. Got to go all these steps and all this stuff, nowhere to park, But Bob would always find me and him a spot. He would say, "Hey, Sonny, man, come out here on PCH, man. I promise a spot out there." So I say, "Bob, man, PCH. Man, we can't even turn around and get back over there and get our stuff." How PCH is if you've been down there, right? So we did all that. And then we did the Larry David, the guy from Seinfeld. We got that gig, and we had a good time, but we had some problems with the events coordinator. She was kind of so she had everybody in the band mad. We almost all was going to leave, but we stuck it out. We did that thing, and after that, we just kind of talked on the phone. I talked about off and on, talking to him off and on. And then I got a call, and I knew he had already told me he had an operation on his shoulder from some kind of they had taken some pieces out of his shoulder or something. So I said, "Hey Bob, what's going on?" He sounded real weak. Uh-oh. So he said, "Hey Sonny, man, I don't know, I don't want to be around." I said, "Well, what's going on?" And he explained it to me, So I said, "Well, I try to go, back in the church with him." I said, "Hey, Bob, just hold on, man. Keep the faith. Believe in the Lord, you will be saved. He's healing. Believe in Jesus Christ will heal you, man. And so Bob didn't want to do all that chemo and other stuff, they do radiation chemo and all that. So I said, "No, man, I know what you're saying, man, but I'm at the end. I'm gonna go on in." So. Emmett called me, a lot of us called him, we all tried to talk to him, But he had made up his mind, and all you guys know about, when he make up his mind, that's it, right? Ain't nobody. So anyway, I called again one time, and Rosemary never answers that phone. I said, "Oh man, Rosemary answers the phone." So she said, "Hey, Sonny, Bob, get prepared, So then we all of us got the call, that he went home to be with the Lord, we just bless him, and he's a great guy, and all of us think highly of him. He's a good friend of me. You know, I miss the guy, you know, because we had a lot of fun together, playing music and doing other stuff, you know, so I just like to say that I know you all know him. Bless his soul and hope he's with the Lord. And you know, that's it. Thank you.
When Bob decided to get onto hospice, because I'll tell you, this guy lived life to the fullest. And when he realized that he couldn't do that anymore, he was ready to go. The three of us just automatically grabbed onto one another and spent the last couple of weeks of Bob's life with him at Rosemary's. I'd sleep at Patty's because I live out of town. And we hated to leave. We'd go home, we'd sleep, we'd get up, and we'd go right back because we didn't want to be away from Bob. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't in pain. He had absolutely no regrets. He said, I had a wonderful life. I loved my life. I am so grateful for all the people and all the experiences. And he was ready because he felt so fulfilled. And the three of us felt like a three-legged stool, you know. Every time one of us was gone, even for just a few minutes or to run out to the store or something, it didn't feel quite the same. When we came back together, we were all there. We were all there because we loved Bob so much, and he loved us so much. We looked at each other one time. We got Bob's biggest fear was being controlled by women. Well, we loved him to death. And one other thing about that, now I was Bob's girlfriend for about half the time he was with Rosemary, but it was right before Rosemary. And I remember after seeing him for about 6 months daily, and we were together. I said, Bob, if we're still feeling like this in another 6 months, I'm going to want to move in together. Well, we were at the Boulangerie having coffee, and he just about choked. He dropped his coffee. He said, I don't want to stop skydiving. I don't want to stop being an artist and go get a real job and move out into the suburbs and get a white picket fence and a real job just so I can buy you new drapes every 6 months. I didn't believe him, of course. I thought, you fall in love, you want to get together, and he'll change. 12 years later, no. As circumstances would have it, he and Rosie were the perfect team. They were both fiercely independent and loving and gave each other space. I wasn't mature enough to do that. But he wouldn't have moved in if the workshop hadn't burned down. And it was just temporary. But he really liked it. He really liked having Rosie in the morning say, I love you, and making him dinner at night. And he could go off on his own, and he had home. And I'm so grateful that he got to see that it wasn't just streets and picket fences. You know, that he could be a whole person with another person. He's a dear, dear, special man. We all know that. Just don't know it, because he's just Bob. Rosie, I think,
Thank you.
Well, on Monday, March 20th, I was in the dining room having my morning ritual of prayer and meditation and writing in my journal. I was sitting in the dining room across from Bob, who was asleep in his bed in the adjoining room. Nancy was there in the living room, and we were expecting Patty to arrive shortly. The three of us had been spending Bob's final weeks of hospice together. I kept a journal and I was writing, and I stopped for a moment and looked over at Bob and felt the need to write a letter to him. These two ladies had been right by my side. I then read the letter to Bob. Now we are here, all of us, together, loving Bob at the end of his life. How sweet the music is in the background. One of his favorites, Dan Getz, playing the saxophone. Is that me? No, oh. Is that me? So sweet, peaceful sleep. Sleep, my dear Bob, I love you. You have touched my heart like no other. You have taught me how to have a good time camping. That's the big one. Be free now, my love. Your airplane is ready for flight. You are all gassed up, ready to go anytime you want. I know you will leave when you are ready. I'm not in a rush for you to go. I know you will make it to your next destiny. I have so enjoyed the time that we spent here with me. So get ready. And thank you for all the love you gave me. Thank you for being kind to me when I needed a shoulder to cry on. Thank you for accepting me and understanding me. Thank you for not wanting to change me. Thank you for accepting me and loving me for who I am. I will love you forever. That's just the way it is. Spread your wings now and fly away to your next journey. I love you, my dearest Bob. Thank you.
When Rosemary was finished speaking, Patty stepped up and invited everyone to participate in a 5-minute meditation enhanced by a sound bath presentation by Bob's friend, Sarah.
Really like to have like a 5-minute meditation. You guys just chill, close your eyes. We're going to listen to some crystal bowls and then we'll do the serenity prayer to close.
Unfortunately, once again, due to the Zoom sound dampening features, we weren't able to record the sound bowls, the sound bath meditation. So we're going to fade out here and fade back in for the serenity prayer and then a final goodbye and the end of the video.
Holding Bob in our heart. You don't have to get out of this. Let's say the serenity.
Change. Courage to change the things I can. And the wisdom to know the difference. Keep coming back.
Please take any of the photographs on the table, any of the art you want, make some donation, whatever you need. Thanks for coming. Thank you.
The summer day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last, and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?